it's neither. It's neither this nor that. This is all theologically based, right? You know, this is the expression of God's will, whatever that might mean, or it's the fact that there was a fall, whatever that might mean. No, the idea is there's an alternative to this, and the alternative is that individual rational agents deliberate on their environment, on situations, on any number of sensory inputs, and they make critical decisions based on information that they were given. It has nothing to do with another world. It has nothing to do with a return to an innocent state. That innocent state has never existed, right? We have been given, by whatever powers that be, critical assessment, and the idea that this is a bad thing, that it's an elitist snobbery to be proud of the fact that you can think critically, is what led the Khmer to kill. It's what led the Khmer to kill their own people, right? So that we can raise an agrarian class of people who are just workers. It's not anti-work. It's not anti sort of blue collar, right? That's completely conflate the point. It's to completely conflate the point. The point is, the counter argument is an argument which endorses ignorance. It's the dumbest argument in the world. But unfortunately, this is not a hypothetical assessment. We're discussing that today in our national discourse. And that is dangerous. The fact that we're even entertaining the discussion is itself dangerous. And to be honest with you, it's a bit disheartening, to say the least. Number 5, quote, since Plato, philosophy has been dominated by morality. Right? Since Plato, we'll see later, there's this nostalgic attempt to return to this sort of idyllic state. For the philosopher, not the theologian, for the theologian it's, you know, the pre-fall. For the philosopher, it's the idyllic Greek state, right? It's this virtue-based Aristotelian ethic in which the best characters in all men, particularly, rose to the forefront, right? So, since Plato, philosophy has been dominated by morality. And what Nietzsche wants to do is challenge this, right? He wants to challenge the importance. It's not to say that he's anti-moral or immoral in the sort of colloquial sense. It's that he wants to challenge the assumption, right? Why is it that we are, as a community of philosophers, as lovers of knowledge, placing as much emphasis as we are on morality? Number 6, quote, the skeptic, respectable but rare. Like, the idea is that we have to be skeptical. The skeptic, respectable but rare. Accepted, an instinct for intellectual integrity is nowhere evident. Right? Intellectual integrity requires skepticism. You can't properly be said to be a philosopher, a lover of knowledge, a critical thinker, if you're not skeptical, right? The intellectual integrity, the idea that we are going to not hold firm dogmatically to some beliefs that we haven't justified, but we're going to put everything on the table, and everything is going to be subject to change, given an argument, an inference to a better explanation. In order to really do that, in order to really say that I don't have any foundational claims that I hold true above and beyond anything, that every single belief that I've ever had or will ever have is subject to this intellectual integrity, to say that I can be skeptical at that level, it takes a rare, Nietzsche says it, it's a very respectable but rare breed of person. People are terrified of the relativist, the skeptic. What do you mean you don't have a position? What do you mean you don't believe in anything? What do you mean? Right? When you recognize now, though, and hopefully because of, because of stuff that I've been hearing in the news from people like Centaurum, hopefully people will recognize that, listen, there really does need to be a resurgence of philosophy within our popular discourse. And I don't mean philosophy as far as reading Heidegger and Habermas. I mean philosophy as people who aren't ashamed to say that they like being nerdy. People who are lovers of knowledge, people who pride themselves in what they have in their head. That's nothing to hold your head low for. That's nothing to consider yourself as being a snob. That's not a bad thing. Anybody who tells you that that's a bad thing is a bona fide moron. Is a bona fide moron. You can tell him Dr. Campbell said it. Bona fide moron. On what planet is it a bad thing to say that I've learned something? How is that being a snob because I know something that other people might not? The whole point is I take the information that I've learned and I digest this complex bit of information and then I give it back to the people so that you too can learn. It's not for me to stockpile information on my own and then not inform the public and then not inform others and then use it exclusively to my advantage. The idea is that just because you have the knowledge, that makes you a snob, that's a bad thing. The skeptic is critical of everything, even his own knowledge. There's nothing less snobbery about that. That's so humble. It's such a humble position. The position of the skeptic is a very, very, very humble position. Because as Socrates says, the one thing I know is that I don't know. What's more humble than that as your starting point? There's nothing more humble than that. There's nothing less snobbery, less elitist than the point that the one thing that I do know is that I don't know. And then you just stop and say, well, I'm just comfortable in not knowing and not search. No. Then I try and learn. Then I try and attain some sense of the world, some being, some relationship, so that I can become. So that I can become what? So that I can become more aware. We recognize that this is immediately an infinite process. This process of awareness is an infinite process. We will never attain total understanding. It's impossible. Unlike the moral discourse, where improvement is the means with which you sort of mask the reality that you will never attain total morality. The philosopher knows that we're never going to have total understanding. It doesn't mean you don't pursue it. Right? It doesn't mean that you relish in being a dumbass. I mean, what world, what, we live in a very, 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 listen to me people, especially Americans. I know this is a global lecture and I don't know how many people will actually be watching this deep into the lecture. We live in a very, very dangerous time when individuals running for the presidency acknowledge and endorse such anti-intellectualism that is almost indistinguishable from things that I've seen the Khmer say and do. You know, the fact that you know is a mark of something that you should be shamed of is framed in such condescending and pejorative terms. I don't see how it is that. I don't see anything other than humility. The skeptic, for me, is the most humble person, because the skeptic is willing to forego even his own assumptions, even her own assumptions. The things that I believe to be true today, tomorrow, if given an argument to the contrary, I will drop in a heartbeat the things that I hold to be true today. And I will let the community know that I'm not flip-flopping, that I got a new perspective, that I am willing to relinquish this. I'm not going to hold dogmatically to these things and defend it. That's snobbery. That's pride. Because you know that it's wrong. Because it's been proven to be wrong, but you still believe it. Number 7. We no longer believe in morality as they did, right? Nietzsche says, we no longer believe in morality as they did. The they that he's referring to is Kant and Hegel, right? And Schopenhauer and the rest, right? We no longer believe, we immoralists, in the technical sense now, and I've done a discussion ad nausea what that means. We, the immoralists, now no longer believe in morality as they did. Their conception of morality is not our conception of morality, because their conception of morality assumed this false dichotomy, right? Situated morality within some sense a theological discourse, a duty-based discourse, right? This discourse where our morality was a consequence of something